Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be talking about the Batman movie and how much I fucking love it. Let's get into it. So, I have been away for a bit. I wanted to post a study with me video last week because I've been studying for my midterms. That did not work out, seeing as filming on cinematic mode on my iPhone resulted in the files being way too big and I couldn't even transfer them at all for me to actually edit them. So the footage is never gonna see the light of day unless I decide to put a shittier version of it, a less HD version of it, and upload it. But we'll see. Maybe comment down below if you guys actually want to study with me video, because I think I sped it up to about 4 minutes just for fun to see how productive I was that day. But other than that, I have just been trying to keep up with schoolwork and trying to stay on track with all my assignments and my midterms. I still have 2 more this week. I clearly have my priorities set up by filming a video right now instead of studying. Love that for me. But anyway, I think I really just wanted to sit down and have a nice moment and collect my thoughts on my opinions regarding the recent Robert Pattinson Batman movie, or Battinson as people are very fondly dubbing it. I really enjoyed the movie, so let's get into it. What exactly I enjoyed, what exactly I didn't like, and why I think that this is in its own lane separate from the Dark Knight trilogy. So, number 1, the color grading. I think something that I firmly believe that this movie did extremely well is the color grading. Because the thing is that a lot of people's first impressions of Gotham. I think a lot of people's first impressions of the city of Gotham is a very monochromatic city. It's very dull, it's very bleak, and it's very much like a grayscale, very lacking saturation, very much a not very vibrant space. So when I looked at how the filmmakers for this film color graded the movie, I think I absolutely lost my shit in the cinema, and I was sort of just flailing my arms around because I was just like, this is magnificently done. And the thing that stood out for me was how, yes, there is the dull and very monochromatic side to the city, but I think they didn't try to remove all of the color from the city, which is what a lot of the films tend to do. So, no offense to Christian Bale's Dark Knight trilogy, but if you take a look at some of the footage, you are going to have a very grayscale situation for a lot of the scenes. So, even if there's natural light fading in, or even artificial lighting, it's still very grayscale. So I think that's something I found an issue with because it just felt very one tone. The only time there was any color in the Dark Knight trilogy was when they showed Bane's origin story, and when Bruce leaves Gotham, meets Selina or Alfred out in the little cafe. It's almost like Gotham is this own little pool where saturation is just drained and everyone becomes pale and white and just there's no color. So I think something I liked about the Batman movies was that the idea of the characters having no color is not because of the idea of Gotham having no color. It is because of the lighting and the situational factors. So scenes like the sunrise and sunset scenes on the top of the building with the bat signal, amazing, freaking amazing, because you get to see people like Selina. You get to see Zoe Kravitz's Selina with Robert's Bruce standing side by side, and you see the sunlight casting onto their skin, and you get to see them against the backdrop of the skyline of Gotham with the sunrise coming up, and you have your very pale pinks and oranges fading into the picture and casting a very nice glow. I also really like the fact that the bat signal is yellow. It's not the grayish white cast that usually is what they put in the movies. So the yellow adds a little bit more a touch of light and a touch of even a little bit of hope even in this situation. So I really like the color grading of the movie. I like the fact that any strong, bright, harsh colors they brought in tended to only show up in the underground life, which almost seemed to highlight how vibrant, for lack of better words, the dingy side of Gotham was. So you have all of the conspiracy, you have all of the corruption going on underground at 44 and below. 44? Well, I think it was 44 and below at the club. And you have these bright red, bright blue flashing lights in the middle of the raves, and that is where most of the color shows up. And I really, really like that because it washes onto the characters as they're fighting. So you have Bruce like fighting the henchmen in like red lighting, but there's no real blood that actually shows up in the film if you actually notice. Blood is not a key theme where they're trying to draw attention to anything, and I think that's a very smart move of them, because while he is I am vengeance, there is no real desire on his end almost to kill people, which I think is very important, because like the no kill rule is something that I think got lost in translation when they tried to do Batfleck. Like they tried to make Batfleck slightly more like for lack of better words, grungier and a little bit more like cynical about people being good. But I think what they did with Robert's character is that they really tied this version of Bruce to his city, and that is my next favorite part of this film. Some ASMR for anybody who actually wanted it. Also, shout out to my friend Jordan, who gave me his Batman cup from the premiere because I couldn't actually get my hands on one of these and he only wanted the bobblehead, so hats off to you, friend. So, my second favorite point about this film was how they actually portrayed Robert's Batman. Here's the thing. Think about how you have Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark. So, a lot of people will be like, Tony Stark is Iron Man? That doesn't make any sense. This guy, philanthropist, millionaire, playboy, take off the mask, what are you, you know? When you look at Bruce Wayne in this particular film, it's more along the lines of you would never expect Batman to be Bruce Wayne, rather than you would never expect Bruce Wayne to be Batman. He is this wealthy heir to the Wayne Foundation, but he's basically a social recluse. He is the textbook Tumblr boy. He's the textbook Tumblr emo boy with the smudged eyeliner and it's not a phase mom sort of vibe going on about him. And I think I really, really respect that, because I think a lot of people making comparisons to him as like this like wet black cat as Bruce Wayne, but this like seriously ominous and like vengeful presence that would just hover at the side of the room as the police are doing their investigations. And I think that's a very like diverse range in personalities that Bruce has to, or rather Robert has to portray. So you have Bruce on one end, this person who experienced trauma at a very young age, witnessing his parents die on Halloween, and you have Batman, who is trying to figure out how to solve these problems as a response to the trauma he dealt with as a kid. So the thing is, Bruce is still very much a child if you observe him and look at him. He needs Alfred's supervision at every single moment in the film. The moment Alfred is not there, he proceeds to spray paint the hardwood floor. This man, in a very beautiful mansion, spray paints the hardwood floor with white spray paint just so he can draw his massive mind map, as though that is a necessity in this time. How? This man is still a child. He's very much still a child trapped in this young adult's body, and this young adult is trying to work on the things that he wasn't able to work on as a kid, which in this case is solving the crimes in Gotham City, because for him, he has a very strong tie to the city and feels the need to help the city because of his ability to do so as Bruce Wayne. But because they have the whole like idea of your he goes with the vigilante route, and the vigilante route is very interesting because when you look at Bruce as Batman, he's just this like huge presence in a room. The way the cops look at him and the way like the rest of the people in the crime scene look at him, it's just like they both are terrified of him but also let him take the lead, because they know he is aware of what's going on and he knows what he's doing. So in a very weird way, while he is Bruce Wayne and he lets Alfred sort of command the room because he needs the dad figure in his life, while he's in the crime scene as Batman, he commands the room. He just stands in one corner, observes everything, barely says a word, and conveys so much. And I think that's something that I need to add on, is what makes Robert Pattinson's Batman splendid. Like, this man, he has such few lines in this film, and he still manages to make himself jump from like soggy, wet, sad teenager to Like, what is the word I'm looking for? I've never been more terrified of a superhero in my entire life. I was watching and sitting in the theaters, and I sat at the edge of my seat. It was that good. I just held my breath for half the movie, and I left the theater like wondering why the hell I was breathless, and I realized I had forgotten to breathe because the tension build-up was just that good. And so I think that the way they portrayed his Batman was very much almost like a dual personality. The distinction between Bruce Wayne and the Batman is quite clear, and the only part that it ever really blurs is when he attends the wake of the commissioner, if I remember correctly, because that's when he is basically met with the child of the previous mayor, and he has to, I guess, like deal with his own trauma in that situation because he doesn't want a child to go through what he had to go through when he was much younger. So that is where you see the line blur between Bruce and Batman, because he wants to protect the child. The vulnerability is there. So I think when they drew this very large disparity between Bruce Wayne and the Batman, absolutely very smart decision. There's none of the cockiness that comes from being a rich billionaire, and there's none of the almost air of like, I have the power to exact this upon you. When he says I am vengeance, the revenge plot arc is very strong and like is something that powers through what he's trying to achieve because of what was done to him. And then by the end of the movie, you have a arc where you see that even through all of these acts of supposed vengeance, there is still the underlying hope there and a hope for change, which is why he stays in Gotham even though Selina asks him to literally go with him to Bloodhaven. I would have left with this woman, Bruce. Why? My point is, he is so tied to the city and has so much underlying hope for what Gotham could be that it almost seems to be the thing that actually powers his vengeance. Less so the whole revenge plot arc, which is what the front is that he shows to everybody. And I think that depth for the movie is what makes it stand apart from the Dark Knight trilogy, because the Dark Knight trilogy has Bruce Wayne fit into the shoes more of like similar to like Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, philanthropist, playboy, sort of just like this ever-present socialite, yes, this ever-present like socialite in Gotham society, which gave him a almost like hated reputation, as opposed to this Bruce, who's just never seen. So when people see him, they have a lot of like respect for this guy, other than the few people who sort of call him out for not doing anything because he's just MIA half the time, hiding in the dungeon of his Batcave. So I think that is a very important thing that sets it apart from the Dark Knight trilogy. What I think the Dark Knight trilogy did was to create the progression from somebody who was a little stuck up and humbled the person down through all the different experiences felt by his matching villains, as opposed to this particular Batman and this particular Bruce Wayne, who went through the same experiences as his villain because he became orphaned, but attempted to make a change on it very early on. So he almost is a mirror of his own villain that he understands. That's why it's even more painful to see what the villain does, at least the Riddler in this situation. It's almost very painful to see what the Riddler does, because it can almost imagine how easily Bruce could have been in that situation and turned on the city for killing his parents. So I really like the plot progression in that particular aspect, because you have this man who comes into his own and becomes like this beacon of like light, and also just like this savior sort of like person for the city, especially in the scene where he like walks through the water with the flare and the torch and he's leading people out of the water. I think that was very symbolic. The color red as well, very interestingly, the color red used in the scene, because the color red was mostly used for the whole underground corruption situation, but here they've almost spun it on its head into a color of leadership and hope. So maybe it's a color of actually leadership, but it's corrupt leadership, and now it's vigilante leadership. I don't know. You guys can tell me what you think. Also, shout out to my friend Fussy, who literally said Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne or Robert Pattinson's Batman is basically Shadow from Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, that is a peak comment. I love it, I respect it, and I completely agree. So, my last point for the film. What do I enjoy about it? I think the very last thing that I enjoyed about the film is actually the post-credits! For anybody who didn't stay to the end, you are missing out. It's not anything Marvel level where you have a whole trailer now playing at the end of the movie. Not gonna lie, I thought that was a little bit lazy. Just a little bit lazy. But you get my point. It's not a whole clip. It's not anything that's gonna like keep you on your toes forever. But I think it is a very smart marketing tactic, because with a plot line that is so interactive and so involved, where you're gonna have your hardcore fans definitely go about uncovering the cipher in the movie on their own outside of the film. So why not make the actual website a thing and have the fans actually solve ciphers and riddles there? I think that was a very smart decision. I had fun for a solid 3 days in a row, like solving the riddles and trying to figure out the cipher, which I kind of gave up on because I don't have a brain for it. I have the brain the size of a pea, so I don't have the smarts for it. But I went on to Reddit, I took a look at what people were doing with the ciphers and the codes and seeing how people were discussing, and I think that is important. You need to build fan culture, and you need to build a very strong foundation for your fandom, especially when you are developing a new character. And this is a very smart marketing move on their end, because they are developing the character of Bruce in this situation by delving into his dad's past, and also exploring the whole idea of this is what he's up against. What if you were in the shoes of Batman and had to solve these riddles? And you're also put into perspective of these are the kinds of riddles that are coming in from the Riddler. So you're getting an idea of the caliber of villain that Bruce has to deal with. And I think that is wonderfully done. I think it was very, very fun. Personally enjoyed it. And I also really like all the memes that came out on Tumblr and Twitter after the movie, with people just making fun of Bruce. So a selection of my favorite ones coming up over here. Yes, we have the infamous eyeliner one. That one is wonderful. People brought back this old photo of Robert Pattinson just not understanding Snapchat filters. I'm really glad they didn't make a Batman Snapchat filter for this film. If they did, I don't think this man would understand how to use it. That's fine. Someone brought back the old meme of Robert standing in the corner of the room in his Adidas tracksuit. Really love that one. And for me, I think this was a very start to end sort of experience for a viewer, especially if you've been a fan of Robert Pattinson from Twilight days. I was not a twihard, and I don't think I ever will be, but I watched the films. I've never read the books, don't have any interest in reading books, but I think you can see how much he's grown as an actor since then. From all the films he's acted in, you see how much potential he has, and I actually really, really love that this is his most recent film. He went from vampire to Batman and I Am Vengeance in the span of 10 years, and basically just showed up that I am much more than this, and that is wonderful for him. I'm so happy for him. I'm also really happy for Kristen Stewart. She did really, really well in Spencer and deserves that nomination for Academy Award. Go off, Queen! I'm really glad that he made the Batman his own, and I'm really looking forward to any sequels they have planned. I'm looking at you, Barry Keoghan, as the Joker. You better deliver. Jokes aside, I think that Barry should be a good Joker. We've seen his potential as Druig in Eternals, and we've also seen him in Dunkirk. This kid can act. I have high hopes for him, but I also don't expect him to, step into the shoes of people like Heath as well as Joaquin without any pressure. So I hope that he doesn't crumble under the pressure and just makes the Joker his own as well. And that was my review of The Batman. I rate it a high AF 9 out of 10 because I really have nothing against this film. The only problem I had with it was when Bruce took that stupid green canister of I don't even know what and stuck it into his leg and became the Hulk for all of 30 seconds beating up a guy. That was it. I can't even find any fault with him and Selina's relationship because that was done really well. It wasn't even a proper relationship. It was two people relating to each other. And I think that was beautifully done, very nicely characterized. And I think you guys should go watch the film. I'm going to leave you with this very lovely tweet about how Robert Pattinson should play his own Joker. And I wish you all a very lovely week 8 ahead. If you guys have any midterms like me, please go study and watch The Batman only after your midterms. Don't be like me and watch it on opening day, literally after your first midterm. But otherwise, I will see you guys soon. Ciao and take care until next time. Bye guys. So tell me what I need to hear. Is it alright if I got
got to know you better.